Star Ocean, the Second Story R's official Nintendo Switch and PlayStation release is right around the corner on November 2nd. And today we're going to be going over a couple of brand new updates, 5 in fact, that have been revealed through their latest blog developer update, as the developers decided to take a little bit of a deeper dive and provide players with some details that probably they didn't necessarily know regarding this 2.5D art style pixel art with 3D environments around it. They're not necessarily calling it HD 2D, which is something that Square Enix has been doing quite a lot, but they are basically coming very, very close to that. In one of their first original questions, they asked the developers, why remake Star Ocean the Second Story? The developers mentioned that Star Ocean the Second Story is a especially popular entry in the series, and they've heard many requests for a remake. In 2023 is the 25th anniversary of the original game, and that, along with the increased profile of the series thanks to Star Ocean the Divine Force, which of course just recently released last year, makes this a perfect time to bring this classic RPG back. And that pretty much falls in line with what a lot of the fans had been expecting. There had been some rumors that the Star Ocean Second Story R was already being reworked in one way or another, and it is one of the more fan favorite releases that we have seen. Now, with that said, I believe Square Enix recently dropped a lot of the Star Ocean games, maybe if not all of the, at the very least, remakes, not necessarily the original PlayStation 1's PlayStation 2 games, but a lot of the remakes and HD updates that we did end up getting through the PS3, PS4, and now PlayStation 5 era of games. A lot of them ended up dropping on like PlayStation Plus Premium, Ultimate, whatever they end up calling that thing, which I do have. And interestingly enough, I saw a lot of the Star Ocean games there. So if you haven't necessarily played them and you have PlayStation Plus, Premium, Ultimate, whatever, those games are readily to be available there. And with, of course, Star Ocean the Second Story R missing, but presumably it's going to be one of those games that will be making its way to the fold in the future. In a follow-up question, they asked him, the original Star Ocean Second Story is one of the most fondly remembered RPGs of this era. Why do you think that is? The developer's response is, when you think of the traits of the great RPGs, two of the most important are colorful characters and the story. The original Star Ocean the Second Story used many methods to make these elements truly shine. The multifaceted story development with two protagonists, characters appearing from both science fiction and fantasy, the side quest systems that let you explore the lives of the characters, and the abundant variety of endings. Thanks to this, the game delivered a rich, meaningful experience that left really strong impressions in the minds of players. Of course, these elements are present in Star Ocean the Second Story R too. We have implemented renewed illustrations that bring to the story life even more, new systems that allow you to play through the game's side stories with more convenience. And if any of you have been able to get your hands on the demo, which I believe is also available on PlayStation consoles, but I know for a fact is available on the Nintendo Switch, which I believe lets you play a limited up to 3 hours of the game you can actually play through. They do section you off in certain areas, but you can play it for up to 3 hours. And of course, your save will carry over to the main game, and in it you should be able to experience quite a lot of what the game has to offer and be able to see that this is actually accurate. The game not only looks beautiful, but especially on the Nintendo Switch, it runs extremely well, fluid, no real issues to complain about, no performance drops or anything along those lines. Of course, more involved engagements with the entire team is not something that you're going to be able to see on the demo, but the addition of just the beautiful art and some of those quick attacks you're going to be able to drop in characters in and out of in the middle of battle might actually cause some performance issues, but we don't necessarily know. One of the things that I will mention is that I did see some of the gameplay, specifically direct feed gameplay for PlayStation 5, and the Nintendo Switch version certainly holds up. This is a game that I'm going to be reviewing myself as we get closer to launch, and this is one of the things that I'm certainly going to talk about quite a lot, is the way that the game looks and how it actually holds up in comparison to the PlayStation 5 version. In the follow-up question, they ask, why did you choose the beautiful new 2.5D art style for this remake? The developers mentioned that while they were developing the title, they wanted to have a refreshed new visuals that capture the appeal of pixel art and the distinctive JRPG flavor it brings. Not only did they improve on the quality of the pixel art, but they also used a particular pixel art shader to imagine what these characters who have left a great impression on players would look like if they lived in a 3D world. Now, one of the things you will be able to notice if you actually paid a closer attention to the actual gameplay, or at the very least play the demo yourself, is that you're going to be able to see that the characters are actually fully 3D rendered, like actual bodies. They're not pixel art. Like, they look like they're pixel art, but they're not. They actually turn around specifically like a 3D character models would, or anything along those lines. They're just rendered to look like they're actually pixel art, which is a very clever trick that the developers decided to do. Alongside that, of course, the entire game world, or most of the game world, is rendered, of course, in 3D with some pixel art assets kind of like been thrown in there. But the characters themselves are actually 3D units showcased in the actual area, or even in the battles. But they are set to look like pixel art, which is a very, very clever distinction that they have been able to do. And they are colored beautifully. One of the things you should be able to see, at the very least in some of the gameplay here, is of course the fact that they are, like, you know, depending on the shadow bounce, the color bounce of the area, day or night cycles, whatever it may be, they are like truly stand out based off of like what colors are basically around them. There's no ray tracing by any means, but they look extremely well rendered in that regard. Another one of the developers are asked, what new features have you added to this remake? The response is, we haven't changed the story from the original second story, but we have renewed many components of the game. For example, we have a completely renewed set of effects. We've rebuilt the world, including the world map. All the cities and dungeons with a new style. You find many new quests and items in these areas. The world they've set to create is beautiful and worth exploring. There are now multiple language options too. You can play with English or Japanese voice acting in Star Ocean Second Story Evolution on the PSP. Alternatively, you can play the game as a whole with a brand new Japanese voice recordings featuring the PlayStation 1 versions of the original cast. Plus, we've greatly revamped the combat system, turning the iconic Star Ocean battles that fans know and love into something high-speed, extravagant, and exhilarating. We wanted to create the feeling that you're fighting together with allies. Hang tight for future announcements about these systems. And some of those are, of course, the fact, like I mentioned before, you can actually drop in and out in the middle of combat sequences, because there's a lot of chains that you're going to be able to want to like build up to be able to get some damage boosters with your party. You're going to be able to drop in some characters in the middle of combat as that. At the same time, of course, you can shift from control for any one of the characters and spam abuse them as well. One of the things you should be able to see, or at the very least those who decided to play the demo should be able to know, that you can actually tell the AI to, I would argue the AI is not necessarily all that competent, but you can tell them to kind of like save MP, save, you know, focus on skills, focus on targeting anything that you're targeting, those type of things. Those pseudo kind of controls are readily available there. While you're not necessarily controlling those units at all times, you can only control one unit at a time. Those pseudo controls should be able to help you manage in high hectic middle of combat situations. Lastly, the developers are asked, what are you most excited for fans and new players of the series in Star Ocean the Second Story R? They mentioned that they can't wait for players who wanted the original title to see the locations and the original game have been beautifully and newly brought to life in this game, and so they can enjoy memorable stories with their allies. As for the players who are about to start the experience of Star Ocean for the first time, they hope that you enjoy the exciting new high-speed battles in Star Ocean the Second Story R, and enjoy the journey into a world where fantasy and science and fiction collide. So basically, the developers are hoping that everyone who picks up the game and gets their hand on it will have a good time. Once again, the game is pretty much right around the corner. The release is not too far away in November 2nd. But that's about all the information that I have for you guys today regarding Star Ocean the Second Story R's. This a fantastic PlayStation 1 remake brought over to a brand new generation of players, and for me particularly is a game that I have been looking forward to review pretty much since I originally got to play the demo. I want to say about 2 months ago by now. And it is one of those games that I couldn't put down, of course, other than the limitation, random limitation. I would have actually enjoyed if the developers decided to just kind of let you have full access to the game at the very least to a certain point, and then kind of cut you off, instead of just like after a certain point in the demo you cannot get enemies to spawn. Your level will be capped, X amount of like money you can make is capped, all those kind of things, because they don't want you to like overpower yourself too early on. So it is one of those things that they've even thought about that as well, so you don't necessarily ruin the story by playing the demo for like 30 hours or whatever it is, which a lot of, you know, these early access demos have kind of like allowed players to be able to do just that, grind money, and then basically you know, have like an easier experience as you're able to finally get your hand on the game when it launches. Once again, link in the description below for the official blog update from the developers. And if you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.